Welcome into a special edition of the Jordy Culotta Show, live here on this Thursday as we catch up with one of the best in the business in college football, Bruce Feldman, who covers the sport for The Athletic. You can find Bruce's work over there at The Athletic. You can also always hit him on Twitter. As we always tell you, he is a New York Times best-selling author. He was the author, of course, Flip the Script with Ed Ogeron in 2019, Meat Market back in 2006, and Building a Quarterback, the making of a modern-day quarterback. You can find that in Bruce on Twitter, at Bruce Feldman CFB, and he's back with us here on the Jordy Culotta Show. Bruce, as always, thank you for the time. Good morning.
Good morning, Jordy. Good to be on with you.
Obviously, there is a ton of what's happening around the college football world, and a lot of the eyeballs are here in Baton Rouge. There has been a ton of smoke around a lot of names in who could be next for LSU. What's the latest that you've heard on the vacancy down here in the SEC?
You know, it's been a lot of one step this way and three steps the other way. You know, for a while I'd heard how Scott Woodward was optimistic that he could pull Jimbo Fisher out of A&M, but everybody I talked to at A&M said that's not happening. And obviously Jimbo Fisher has had multiple denials about it. The last one earlier this week, he was adamant, so much so that if he ends up in Baton Rouge coaching, I think he would have a lot of explaining to do. So I just don't think that, you know, I don't think you go as strong as he did if you have any thought that you would be leaving for that job. Beyond that, we knew there was some interest from some people inside LSU about Mel Tucker, but it sounds like Michigan State is trying to lock up Mel Tucker to a really lucrative long-term deal. We'll see how that plays out. He's obviously had a terrific year, but this is really his first winning season in 3 years as a head coach. You know, Scott Woodward's we always just assume he has an ace up his sleeve. When you look at it, because, you know, I was told the Lincoln Riley rumblings about him potentially going to LSU. I heard that he's not doing that. So you look at the rest of the coaches out there. I mean, maybe they would hire Billy Napier. I don't know if LSU would hire a coach from Lafayette. I don't know. He's done a really good job, but politically, would they sign off on that? So then I circle back to maybe Scott Woodward thinks he can get Luke Fickell to leave. We know USC would like to have him. He's done a really good job. I don't know, because if he doesn't get somebody like that, I don't know who they made a big move to get then at that point.
How about one of the latest names on one of your centerpieces of your last piece that went up in Dave Aranda at Baylor? He is a popular name right now, and he had a big win over Oklahoma last week. Where do you think he stands with the possibility of getting the job in Baton Rouge?
I feel like he'd be more likely to go to, if he were to leave Waco, be more likely to go to USC or Washington. I'd be kind of surprised if Scott Woodward would hire Dave, one, because he's only had really one. He's been a head coach 2 years. The first year was a real struggle. This year has worked out well, and they're having a really good year. But would Scott Woodward go back to the 2019 LSU championship tree? That doesn't seem like something he would do. I could be wrong. I don't know. That would surprise me a little bit, to be honest.
How about a name like Matt Campbell? His name has come up over the last couple of days as a possible kind of outsider. You know, it seems like, Bruce, when people try to evaluate how Scott Woodward works, they want to find a name that nobody's talking about, kind of like how he's making you look at Jimbo Fisher and Mel Tucker. Meanwhile, he's trying to get a deal done with Lincoln Riley. Now Lincoln Riley's name is out in the forefront, and people are grabbing names like Matt Campbell, and you brought up Luke Fickell. What do you know about Campbell and his stability in Ames, and how much would he make sense down here at LSU?
I think Matt Campbell's a terrific head coach. I think he's done an amazing job at Iowa State. They had their best season ever last year. The problem, I think, is right now they're 6-4. They're going to play at Oklahoma. There's a real good chance they're going to be 6-5. I mean, does LSU basically pay close to $20 million to fire a guy who won a national title to bring in somebody who's struggling to go above 500 in the Big 12? I mean, I think if Washington could hire Matt Campbell, I think that's a great hire for them. If USC could hire him, I think there'd be concerns a little bit about, well, how well could he recruit 5 stars and that kind of thing. When it comes to LSU, I think the other part of it is, again, the timing is not great. Now, look, Scott, we're really confident in what he can do. I think that could be a good hire. I just think the optics of, you would get a lot of people going, man, you spent a fortune to hire a guy who is struggling to be over 500 in the Big 12. And I don't know how that plays. Maybe Scott Ward doesn't even care. Like I said, I think he's a really good coach. I just feel like sometimes some of these ADs and leaders at schools get sucked into thinking, getting too focused on optics and not making the right decision long term. But there's definitely question marks. I mean, this has not been a great year, and the FCC is a different animal to go recruit in that league. It's different.
Is the LSU job better than the Oklahoma job?
In some ways it is. The part that I think, if you're Lincoln Riley, you work for the guy who's considered the best AD in college football, in Joe Castiglione. He's got a young family. Those kids have grown up now in Norman. He's taken them to playoffs. They're going to go into the SEC anyway. They have good facilities, really good facilities too. Here's the thing is, like, like I said, I'm told he's not going to take it. But if he were to go to LSU and he misses the playoff 3 times, they're going to fire him. Yeah. And they're going to fire him, and he's going to walk away with a lot of money. But, like, if you're taking this job, you have to go in with your eyes open knowing, man, this place just fired a guy less than 2 years after he won a national title. Like, if you have like a quarterback room that gets depleted by injury, your tenure could be completely dashed. I mean, that's the nature of the place right now. Where I said, like I said, at OU, he knows he's got a great situation. Whereas at LSU, I think you walk in to a lot of uncertainty with a athletic department and a university that's been rocked by scandal and has been digging out from it for a while.
Bruce Feldman joining us here on the Jordy Culotta Show. He's on Twitter at Bruce Feldman, CFB. A lot of jobs have opened up. The latest was Virginia Tech. Do you expect Florida to open?
I do. Look, Jordy, you watched the game. I mean, they got mauled by a really beaten up LSU team. And then it's been worse since then. I mean, I did a big story on The Athletic talking to a lot of coaches in both sides of the FCC about what's wrong with Florida. You hear things like a lack of accountability, a lack of discipline, soft, terrible recruiting by Dan Mullen. People look at Dan Mullen's culture of excuse making. You see it in his losses. I mean, after that story, they got embarrassed by South Carolina. South Carolina shouldn't be blowing anybody else out in the SEC 40-17. So then Mullen fires longtime defensive coordinator and his longtime offensive line coach. And then the next week they play a sub-500 FCS team and they give up 42 points in the first half. I don't know how you keep him if you're Florida. Recruiting has already been circling the drain. It's not going to get any better if you keep him for another year. And even the financials of it, his buyout is $12 million. It's not going to change if you keep him another year. It doesn't go down. So my guess is at the end of the year, they make a really uncomfortable move, and the AD who brought him there says, you know what, this is not working out. Here's your money, and I'm going to go try somebody else.
You and I have talked about this before, but as these jobs continue to open up, and if Florida opens up and Miami could potentially open up, if you talk and listen to people around college football, if you were making a hire right now, would you focus primarily on an offensive-minded coach or a defensive-minded guy?
I would try to really find the guy I believe is the best leader and who can recruit and go from there, because you get too caught up in an offensive guy or a defensive guy, and then I think you kind of, maybe you don't get that guy, and then you end up with somebody who's good in a lot of ways but lacking in the most important ways. I mean, if you have somebody who can lead and you have somebody who really can recruit as a head coach, those, I think, are key pieces. If you get somebody who you think is a wizard at scheme and they're not that good at recruiting, if you're a top program or you think you're going to be, you're going to get left behind. I mean, Dan Mullen is a prime example of that. He's a really good X and O's guy and good on Saturdays. He's not a good recruiter. You see it. And you also see the lack of accountability and the lack of toughness showing up in other areas. I would say, I think you really need to see who can be a big picture head coach, because a lot of times, you have coordinators. Most guys who are head coaches, with the exception of Mike Leach, and maybe a few others, they're really not that hands-on on one side of the ball. I mean, it's great to have that expertise, but I think that's the part where I think it's like, don't get too focused in on one specific thing. Just try to find the best guy.
Bruce Feldman joining us here on the Jordy Culotta Show. A couple more, we get you out of here. Can anybody beat Georgia?
Yeah, I think Alabama could. They have a really good young quarterback and some speed at receiver, and they may have the best best player in the country in Will Anderson. I mean, I don't think Georgia, with Stetson Bennett at quarterback and with a good but maybe not great secondary, is unbeatable. I mean, it's not like they've run through a gauntlet. I mean, they beat Clemson 10-3 in the opener. We found out Clemson isn't all that good this year, right? So I don't know. I think they're more than deserving to be the number one team, but I don't think they're an unbeatable team.
Bruce, in the assistant pool this year, there's not that Sarkisian like there was last year where you knew he was going to get the next big job. But there are talented assistants around the country, and I thought that you had a good piece focusing on that, and some of those guys are on Georgia's staff. But is there that assistant coach that's ready to pop, that could be the next big name, or somebody that could be an up-and-comer that people should be watching out for?
Mike Elko has done a great job as the Texas A&M defense coordinator and other stops. I think he's a guy. He was close to getting the Kansas head coaching job last year. I would not be surprised if he got a head coaching job at this point. I mean, he's done a really good job. I think Joe Moorhead, who obviously didn't have a great run at Mississippi State, that wasn't an ideal fit. But there's a lot of these jobs, especially in the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, Washington. I think they're looking at Joe Moorhead, or he's one of the guys that they're looking at. So I think those guys would be high on the list. Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, who did a terrific job at Cincinnati, he's going to be in on the Virginia Tech job. So there's some guys out there. I feel like it's a pretty solid pool of options if you want to go that route, if you're an AD.
Bruce, last one. We'll get you out of here. Do you think Scott Woodward knows today, right now, as you and I speak, who the next LSU head coach is going to be?
That's a good question. I hope so, for his sake. I mean, here's the thing. I think Matt Campbell is a really, really good coach. And I think Scott Woodward is strong enough to know, yeah, he was 7-5 in the Big 12. That doesn't bother me. I'm not buckling my knees. I think he's the right guy. Then all of a sudden, though, if it doesn't go well, Scott Woodward knows his reputation is going to go in the toilet from it. But I think he's strong enough to say that, right? Because you start going through the list of top 25 teams and who has a chance to leave. It's not like Ryan Day is going to Baton Rouge. It's not like Kirby Smart's going to Baton Rouge. This is not an easy situation, So that's the one that was interesting to me, is especially if they don't beat Oklahoma, 7-5, maybe even 6-6. I mean, the timing's not great. I could see USC. I know USC has some interest in Matt Campbell. I could see USC going, we can't really hire him because of this. I think Scott Woodward has enough confidence to be like, no, I can overcome that. If it's that route.
Read the latest at The Athletic. You can also check out all the selections of books at brucefeldman.com. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a good friend of the show, and he's back with us giving excellent insight. Thank you as always, Bruce. Have a great weekend.
My pleasure, Jordy. Thanks for having me. Good talking to you.
All right, man. See you. There is Bruce Feldman checking in here on the Jordy Culotta Show, talking a little bit about this LSU job. A lot of people expect this Florida job to open up. I mean, we talked to Josh Pate this morning. That was Bruce Feldman there. Those guys are national and well-respected names. I mean, both of them said that they expect the Florida job to open up. Sounds like Feldman's getting his information from Ed Ogeron.
Oh my,
like it. Did you?
oh my God, dude. Oh my God.
What's smirking in the corner over there?
I mean, because you've done a bigger puff piece than that. I mean, it's very obvious who's getting his information from. But that's a good one, Bruce. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. I mean, he is, we've known that, I mean, like he said, that relationship, he wrote the book, flipped the script. All right, thanks for coming back with us for this special edition of the Jordy Culotta Show. Bruce Feldman, who's been on top of this coaching searches and vacancies and openings throughout college football, with a couple of minutes there here on this Thursday edition. Make sure and stay safe out there on the wet roads, and come back with us tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Tell a friend. We're driven every day by Go Chevrolet. Stop in and see Go. They got a used car lot here in Baton Rouge at Florida Boulevard and Sherwood Forest, and a new car lot out in LaPlace, Louisiana.
Scott Woodward's got a reputation. He's going to be in the tanker after this. Yeah. You know? Hate to hear that for him. Scott's done so good.
Makes good points, though, man. I mean,
absolutely.
It's a tough time right now when you look around. You know what I mean? Like, is there that guy? I mean,
that's always the risk
if
about
Jimbo's
firing a
told
guy.
you no,
well, look at what's happening in Texas. Even if you do
right.
feel like you do have the
That's
guy,
right.
you have to. Is it really just because of what college football, like the landscape has become, where you have to win now no matter what? Because
Yeah, I mean,
but what precedent is there for like that to be the case? It hasn't really happened all that often. I feel like people have had success, but like first time coaches winning doesn't happen all that often. Everybody's chasing Nick Saban, but even he had time to get established. Like there's no chance for people to get their feet underneath them. If Sarkisian has to go after 1 year,
well, Washington just fired their coach after 2 years.
Yeah.
right? Like
yeah, you're right. I mean, it's
the win now culture makes it impossible to be a head coach right now.
that's always the risk of firing a guy, because you don't know what the pool of coaches are gonna. Because remember when we hired Coach O, that was when they probably had 3 or 4 guys that were like super hot names that were gonna get job somewhere, and it was just a bigger pool of like names, I guess. Here it's like, Napier could be good, could not be good. Aranda's still starting early. They don't really have that group of coaches in this, I guess, free agent pool.
That's why I thought your question about coordinators was so interesting, because that's usually what the hiring process is. But now it seems
there's
like they're trying
right.
to, because there's none of that available.
Right.
You have to go and try and poach head coaches.
It's tough because like these guys are at big schools. Like you said, you're going from like Josh Pate, your guy. Josh Pate said, cloud 9 to cloud 10. Like you're making an upgrade, but you're not.
It's not a career-defining move.
Yeah, it's not significant enough to where you want to take that risk. That's tough. Jimbo. I mean, that's the big guys that you want. Like they don't need to do that.
Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We'll be back with you. Anything else?
No, I was gonna say that's why you hope to hit on like an Aranda who's seems to be like he's established, but he's also doesn't have like you want the skins on the wall already, but he doesn't have that. But it seems like he's building a winner already, so that's why you have to take a chance on somebody like an Aranda or even a Napier, where they don't really have they're not really proven, but it's a gamble. Like there's no sure thing. It's just wild that you have to make that deciding factor.
It's a gamble. It's a hell of a seat to gamble on.
They could both be wrong, and you just have to pick the lesser of the two. It's wild.
I appreciate you joining us back here. Go Chevrolet drives us. We'll be back with you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.